I'm Freedom Dares. My subject today, I discuss about, I am reciting about activity, week 3, activity 1. Activity number 1 is, the questions is, how science is observed in the Philippines during the pre-Spanish era. And my answers is, Filipinos were already engaged in activities and practices related to science forming, primitive on, or first wave technology. They were curative values of some plant on how to extract medicine from herbs. They had an alphabet, a system of writing, a method of counting, and weight and measure. Activity number one, activity 1, number 2, questions how technology is used by people in the Philippines during the free Spanish era. And the answer is, they already had an alphabet number system or weighing and measuring systems and a calendar. Filipinos were already engaged in farming, shipbuilding, mining, and weaving. Like the Banawi rice terraces are among the most sophisticated products of engineering by free Spanish era Filipinos. Number 3. Question number 3 is, how trading during free Spanish era had influence of the lives of the Filipinos. My answers is, before the Spanish era first occupied the Philippines, the country was already rich with local cultural history, ranging from trading, interactions with the Chinese, Japanese, etc., to engaging with Islamic leaders from the Middle East and eventually spreading Islam. And then I'm continue to activity 2, question number 1. What was brought by the Spanish colonization in Philippines? The answers is, Spanish colonial rule saw the introductions of Christianity, the code of law, and the oldest modern university in Asia. The Philippines was ruled under the Mexico-based viceroyalty of New Spain. Number 2. What were focused by science and technology during the Spanish regime? And the answer is, explanations. Compared to the American durations technology, an era became greater modernized and prioritized than the Spanish durations, thus as in the main centered on studies for the tropical diseases and agricultures, mills processing, forestry, medication, and pharmacies. Next, number 3, describe the lives of the Philippines during the Spanish regime in terms of education. The educations of pre-Hispanic Filipinos was fixed for the needs of their times. There was no formal schooling. Parents trained their children informally. Mothers educated their female children in housekeeping, weaving, basket making, and other agriculture related activities. Next is number 4. What was brought by the galleon trade in the country during the Spanish era? True Chinese silk was by far the most important cargo. Other exotic goods such as perfumes, porcelains, cottons, fabric from India, and precious stones were also transships via the galleon. After unloading at Acapulco, this cargo normally yielded a profit of 100 to 300%. Number 5, what halted the growth of science in the Philippines during the Spanish era? In a report by the U.S. Economic Survey to the Philippines in 1950s, there is a lack of basic information which were necessities to the country's industries, act of a support of experimental work, and minimal budget for scientific research, and low salaries of scientific employment by the government. Next is activity 3. Number 1 questions is, what were the development of science and technology during the American era? American era where science during the American period was including towards agriculture, food processing, forestry, medicine, and pharmacy. Not much focus was given on the development of industrial technology due to free trade policy with the United States, which nurtured an economy geared towards agriculture and trade. Number 2, how the Americans implement science educations in the Philippines. Americans introduced the idea of free educations to the Philippines islands. The United States even sent teachers to help establish school where the Filipino children could have a free education. Number 3, how does the desire of the Americans to develop the human resources had helped the Filipinos? Education became a very important issue for the United States colonial government since it allowed it to spread their core cultural values. particularly the English language to the Filipino people, instructions in English language, and American history lead to forming a national identity and Filipino nationalism. Number 4, how the World War II had destabilized the development of the Philippines. Large amount of physical capital were destroyed through 6 years of ground battles and bombing. Many individuals were forced to abandon or give up their property without compensation. It's so very difficult. And to move on to new lands. Periods of hunger become more common even in relatively prosperous Western Europe. And the last one is how the development of science and technology in the Philippines shape and impact the people. Through science, it shapes students to broaden or deepen their knowledge in terms of the awareness to the development of the country. It acquires of numerous advancements in the continually process and improvement of the technology that rely on the needs of the country. That's all my recitate about globalization. No, I mean week activity 3. Thank you.